Hi guys, welcome back. Okay, so we are ready for chapter 4 of Wish. I'm hoping that whoever has not heard the story or read it before is enjoying these real outs. I figured Bertha was going to be mad at me for kicking that girl, but she surprised me by putting her arm around me and saying, "Tomorrow's a new day." Then she gave me a little squeeze and added, "Personally, I just love those boots." She didn't say one word about my inappropriate behavior. Mama would have hollered at me and reminded me for the umpteenth time that I was a troublemaker, just like my daddy Scrappy. After supper that day, we had blueberry pie for dessert, and I got to make my wish. If you cut off the pointed end of a slice of pie and save it for last, you can make a wish when you eat it. I learned that from my cousin Melvin. He swore it worked for him when his brother ran off and got married and left him with a bedroom all to himself. Then he didn't have to share it. I knew Gus and Bertha were watching me cut off that pointed piece and push it to the edge of my plate, but they didn't say anything. Even Bertha had been kind of quiet during supper. Maybe she really was mad at me about kicking that girl Audrey. Maybe she was thinking, the apple don't fall far from the tree. She's just like her daddy. Maybe that night in bed, her and Gus were going to whisper to each other about how much I am just like my dad and what in the world had they gotten themselves into by asking me to come stay with them. After I ate that little pointed piece of pie and made my wish, I went out to the front and I watched Gus do some weeding in the vegetable garden. There was a fluffy black cat who rubbed up against my legs, purring up a storm. I wrote my name in the dirt with a stick. Then I scribbled it out. There wasn't one blade of grass in that front yard, just dirt and rocks. Some sprinkles of color here and there, little patches of flowers. There were patches of wildflowers nestled all around the clothesline posts in the yard. Little pink blooms of a dogwood tree over by the driveway, and a neat row of daffodils, lined up like little soldiers all along the edge of the chicken wire fence that surrounded the garden. Gus used to whistle while he went around digging around the little tiny tomato plants, stepping carefully in between the pole beans and the zucchini that were just beginning to poke through the warm spring dirt. On my very first day in Colby, Bertha had said to Gus, "Let's take Charlie on a tour of the garden." So I followed along behind them while they pointed out each little plant, tell me how the pole beans were going to climb up the twine and the zucchini would have giant yellow flowers. And I just nodded and said, "Oh," because what are you supposed to say about vegetables in the garden? But Gus, you would have thought that was the Garden of Eden out there, the way he took care of it. Examining each new leaf on the okra plants, moving to the squash vine, moving them out of the way where you would walk along the path, careful not to squish them or step on them. So while I scribbled in that red clay dirt, Gus was whistling around. Every now and then he would tug on the bill of his cap or swat at the mosquitoes in the air, and I could hear Bertha in the kitchen talking to some of the cats while she fed them. She was scolding one of them for tussling with a bird. Then she told another cat he was getting too fat. I was about to go on back inside when something caught my eye. There was movement behind the tangle of shrubs that separated the yard from the woods. The black cat darted off, disappearing behind the shed near the garden. I stood real still. I squinted into the darkness. All of a sudden, a dog poked his little head out from behind the bushes. It was that skinny brown and black dog with those long floppy ears. The same dog that I'd seen fighting that afternoon when I was on the bus. He looked at me and cocked his head to the side. Then he ducked back a little bit. I took one slow tiptoe step toward him. And then he took off like lightning, running off into the woods. "Dang it!" I said. "You say something?" Gus called from over in the garden. "There was a dog over there." And I pointed to the bushes. "Brown and black?" he asked. "Floppy ears?" "Yeah, did you see him?" "No, not now, but I've seen him plenty of times before." "Who does he belong to?" Gus propped the garden up against the fence and sat down in the lawn chair. "I think he's just an old wild stray. Been hanging around here for a few months. Bertha keeps putting some table scraps out for him. He don't mind eating her meatloaf, but he don't want nothing else to do with her." I looked off towards the woods. "I bet I can catch him." Gus took off his baseball cap and scratched his head. "I don't know, that old mutt is mighty skittish." "If I can catch him, can I keep him?" "I think that dog would rather be a stray," he said. "Not having a home where anybody wants you." It seemed kind of sad to me, but I knew what that felt like. I knew what it felt like to be a stray. And that dog, He was a fighter. I'd seen it, just like me. That dog and I had a lot in common. He didn't even know. Suddenly, I was overwhelmed with love. That skinny little dog. I made a solemn vow and promise to myself right then and there, he was going to be mine. All right, that concludes chapter 4. So let's see. I want you to make a prediction today in your journal. I don't want you to be all fancy with the 4 squares or have to go through sequencing in your notes. I want you to make a prediction on how you think Charlie is going to go about pursuing her goal with catching this dog. Do you think she could do it? Do you think she's not going to do it? What do you think is going to happen with her trying to catch this dog? Now, he is a stray, and what do we know about stray animals? Sometimes we have to be really careful, right? We don't normally approach stray animals because we don't know how aggressive they could be, how feisty they might be, if they have any kind of diseases or anything like that. We don't normally go around, okay? Do not go outside and start pursuing stray animals in your neighborhood. Not a good time, especially with the coronavirus, okay? But what do you think Charlie is going to do? We heard her say that she was suddenly overwhelmed with love for this dog. And we haven't seen Charlie feel a positive emotion just yet, right? She's been more towards the negative side with her emotions. She's been very, just kind of in a not so good mood, right, about moving to Colby. So this is kind of the first positive thing that's happened for her. So I want you to just give me a little prediction in your notebook about what you think she's going to do, how you think she's going to go about trying to make this dog her own. Okay? All right, I will see you guys for chapter 5.